Hello everybody, welcome back to Chapter 9 of Convert a Warm, Cheerful Web Design to HTML and CSS. So let's take a look at what we've covered. We've covered 98% of everything we're going to do here. We've sliced the design, we've converted it, we've created the CSS, we've compensated for IE. In this lesson we need to do the cleanup. We're going to focus on typography, looking for any potential bugs, anything that doesn't fit perfectly we're going to fix in this lesson. Alright, so let's take a look at where we last left off. The thing I want to work on right now is some quick cleanup. So you'll see here the text needs some work. Also, this text is too large. It looks like we have some issues right here. So let's start with the tabbing functionality. Now, if I zoom in right here, can you see that spacing right there? We need to get that fixed. So we can do that easily. I'm going to hover over it, right-click, and choose Inspect Element. And now I can see I don't want the UL, I actually want the section. And I want to get rid of that space. And the easiest way we can do it is just to push it up a bit. So why don't we try that? Margin top, and try pushing it up about 5 pixels. And notice that pushes it up so it hides behind that container. Okay? And the next thing is when we hover over one of these tabs, there's no need for the anchor tag to underline as well. That's a little bit redundant. So we can look to see if we have any stylings, and we do. Tab headings A, but when we hover over it, we need to add something new. Okay, so we have that. Let's first go ahead and fix this section that we've already done. And that's stored within tabs. So I'm going to go back to Espresso, and I'm going to search for tabs. And there we go. And let's just add that in. Margin top, -5 pixels. Okay, and the next one is we want to look for any anchor tags that are within tab headings. So tab headings A. And there we go. And now we can just do this one. Tab headings, A hover, text decoration, none. Let's refresh that page and see what we got. All right, and that fixes it. All right, that's all we're going to focus on. Well, maybe we should give a little more breathing room right here. That should be okay. Let's look for categories again and see what we got. We're looking for padding here. So see tabs, UL, that might be it. Maybe 20 pixels is too much. And if I bring that down to around 10, that might be a little better. Let's look. Yeah, I think that's better. So I'm going to go to tabs, UL, and take that top padding. Now, if we want the bottom to remain 20 pixels, we can keep it like that. Refresh the page, and that's a lot of spacing, so maybe keep it at 0. There we go. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so that takes care of that section. Now I want to focus on the heading that we have here. If we go back into Photoshop, you can see, if I zoom in, that the text is actually much smaller. So I'm going to hit the letter T, and we're going to find out exactly what size this is. And it's 13 pixels. So we can find how we can most easily target this. Again, click on it, and it's an H6, and its article H6 font size is 13 pixels. And that makes that a little bit better. All right, let's find the article H6. There we go. Font size. So yeah, this is the cleanup part. You know, it's not fun, but it's just going and fine-tuning everything that we see. Let's go back into, yeah, that looks fine. What else? One thing, notice how if we scroll to the top, these are rounded, but if I scroll down, this button is not rounded and this button. So let's check how that looks in the original PSD. So we see rounded, and then right here, nope, that's not rounded, but that is a different color. We should keep that in mind. But these are rounded. So let's take care of that right now. Right click, choose Inspect Element, and make sure I have that selected. And yeah, we just want to make sure we apply that. WebKit, border radius, 5 pixels, and that'll make sure that that is rounded. And that's going to be applied to all button elements. And we'll keep it like that with this one as well. No need not to. So search for button, and then maybe button. There it is. And we'll change that. WebKit, border radius. This is going to be for older versions of Safari and Chrome. And then we're also going to do Mozilla's version and the official. All right, that's taken care of. The next step is to focus on the typography. So it's very possible that the author used a font that we can't use. Now we could use image replacement, and that's where we simply grab all of these images and we use images as the text. But if possible, why don't we try using font face? instead. So we're going to find a font that looks somewhat like what we have right here. So to do that, easiest solution is to look for the Google Web Fonts. Google.com/web fonts, and now we're just going to find one that looks mildly close to it. If it has to be exact, you can maybe see if you can get that font as a web font, or if you have to use images, you can. But in this case, we don't have to deal with 100% accuracy, so we're going to find something that's a little rough, like you can see right there. So let's take a look around and see what we can find. So why don't we take a look at maybe Merriweather, see how that one looks. Launch in font preview, and let's try it again. Welcome to our site. And make sure I capitalize all of those. Okay, so it's not identical, but I think for the purposes of what we're going to do, I think it's fine for now, and you're free to go in and change it if you want. So if you want to use that, click on Use This Font, and it's very easy. You simply copy and paste this in, and then when you reference the font, you call it Merriweather. All right, let's go ahead and do that right now. We're going to place this within the index of our file, and we're going to place it before our style sheet, like so. Okay, and I'm going to copy Merriweather, and now we need to figure out where to use this font. So we'll go back here, and we know we want to use it at least here. So we're going to try to target all of our headings. And you can see right here, heading 2 tags. All right, so let's go back into Espresso, back to style.css, and we're going to search for H2. And why don't we first change it up here? So we'll say all H3's font family is by default Merriweather. And then if you can't use that font because it's an older browser that doesn't support font face, it'll fall back to whatever we've set before, which would be Myriad Pro, then Helvetica, or Arial. So let's come back and refresh the page. And now can you see that it's using that new font? So if you don't like that, you can always come and change it. Let's zoom out, because it is not identical, but it's close enough for the purposes of this tutorial. And then we also want to update banner H2 as well. So I'll search for that. And while I'm at it, I'll copy this. Banner H2, paste that in. Okay, so we got that. We have the headings here. Okay, so that'll take care of these headings. We have our buttons. Looks like there's a little issue right here, so I'll inspect the element and see if we can fix that a bit. And it's our breadcrumbs. And why don't we adjust the top value right here and find out what we need. And it looks like 2 pixels. See, it's a matter of how much we want to show here. So it looks like we'll keep that to -4 pixels. So I'll come back, search for breadcrumbs, and adjust that to -4 pixels. Refresh, okay, that's fixed. We have our tabs, we have the Who We Are section, we have sponsors, that's receiving that new font. Let's see what else. This is working fine. We have our Twitter stream. Okay, so now why don't we go ahead and grab the background that we discussed earlier, and you can see that right up here. So I'm going to select the arrow tool, the selector tool, and I'm going to make sure I auto-select the layer. I'm going to click on that and see if I can find it. Open up the Layers tab, click it, and I can deselect it, and we can see that those are those 2 lines that we're dealing with here. So that's going to be a special case. So let's just copy that. And I'm going to paste it into a new layer and deselect the background, like so. All right, and let's go ahead and save this for web and devices. So because there is transparency, I'm going to make sure I save it as a ping24. And we'll save it as in site name in the images folder. And I'm going to save this as header divider. All right, let's come back. And now let's figure out how we can target it. So inspect element. And let's come back and select this top area, and we want head social. All right, let's see if we can work with that. Head social. All right, and we have no background. Good. So we can place it right here, background. It's going to be URL. Go into the images folder, and we saved it as header divider. Header divider.ping. And I do not want it to repeat. So let's see what that alone will do, where it'll put it. Okay, that's pretty close, but now we need to adjust the height and the positioning of it. So if we come back to Photoshop and I check the image size, on the Mac I can press Option-Command-I, or you can come up to image size. You can see that we have a height of 53 pixels here. But if I go into our head social, let's check out the computed height. And it's 31 pixels, and that's why it's looking like it's being cut off. So we have a couple ways to handle this. One way would be, let's come back, is to go here and we can say min height, or just height, because it will never exceed that, and we'll make sure that it's equal to that 53 pixels. And now can you see that's entirely showing up? So then at this point we want to make sure that we place the background positioning correctly. So we can do after no repeat the left, the X and Y offset. So if I did 0, 50 pixels, what you'll see is that's going to push it down. So I'm going to bring that down, and if you look right here, you can see that begins to pop back up. So we're getting into negative numbers and it's still not right, and that's because if I hover over this, you can see the top is right here, so it's being cut off, and we really want that line to be placed vertically centered from the top to the bottom. So let's see if we can work with this some more instead. Maybe we can apply some padding so that we can make sure that it's vertically centered. So I'm going to come back, and with head social, I'm going to apply some padding to the top and bottom. All right, and if you want just to get an overview of how it looks, we'll set a background color of red. Okay, so now we have that. We've applied 20 pixels to the top. To place it back to where it should be, we need to make sure we subtract 20 from the top. So we'll set it like so. Okay, that's looking better. And now all we're trying to do here is make sure that we get that divider perfect. So now we'll go after it, and we'll set the X offset to 0. It should be on the far left. But from the Y, let's play around and we'll push it down a little bit and just get it exactly how we want it. And in that case, that looks pretty good. So let's go back to Photoshop, check it out. See, all right, it's just to the left a good ways. That looks pretty good to me. All right, so now we just need to go and paste this information in. So let's rewrite a little bit of this. And then we have right and a top of 10 pixels. And we applied a padding of 20 pixels on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right. And make sure I clean this up, sorry about that. And now we have that background, pretty easy. Okay, let's see what else we want to do. I don't want to do too much more. You can clean this up on your own. This is just a tutorial, but we have everything lined up. That looks fine. Ideally, personally, I'd like a little more spacing between these blog postings, but if we want to keep it close to what we have here, he's got it fairly close to begin with. It looks like he's also using a special font that's Gotham rounded. It even looks like something like a Helvetica New, and that's something you can even use because so many Mac users will have that font installed by default. But we're not going to worry about that in this lesson. There's also a spacer between sponsors. You could add that in yourself, doing the exact same technique of using the background positioning. Let's look at the footer again. All right, we have that. We have that. It looks like there's some extra spacing here, and that's because the way this was designed, if I open this up, you can see that, and don't let this grid scare you, but you can see that the spacing isn't perfectly. So these aren't evenly sliced into threes. They're a little bit different, so that makes it a little more difficult. What you could do, though, is if you want it identical, you could make the width of this get a free quote form smaller, and that'll give you some extra space right here. And then the same thing with Twitter Stream if you wanted to push it over. But what we have right here is a perfectly divided thirds, so you can work on that how you want. Let's go to the bottom. Let's see here, we have some text shadow. Make sure we have some down here at the bottom as well. And it looks like we do have text shadow, but it's not going in the right direction. This is going up. So I will inspect the elements, zoom out a ways, and we would go to Site Info P. And what if we did text shadow and 0 from the left? We're going to push it up, so we'll do -1 pixel. No blur, and let's just set it to red to make sure we're getting something. Okay, good. And now I'm going to zoom in and grab one of these colors. And it looks like it's a dark blue. So I'll grab that, and if I paste that in, okay, now we're getting our text shadow. So now all we have to do is copy and paste that into Site Info. Site Info P. There we go. Go back to Chrome, refresh the page. And now if we zoom out just to get a bird's eye view, the last thing I want to take care of before we finish up is if I come back, it looks like this font is also the same as this one. So I want to make sure that we apply that font to our H1. So let's see if we can find it. Header H1. And the font family, and I've already forgotten it. Let's go back to index.html. It's called Merriweather. So I'll copy that and paste that in as the default. Refresh, and now it's receiving that font. Now, truthfully, I don't think that's the perfect font. We could find something better with a little research, or you can use things like fontsquirrel.com. But the design's going to be fine. You can work on it if you like. Now, the next step is, let's say you're finished with it and you want to deploy it. Well, a couple of things you need to be aware of is you don't want to have all of this uncompressed information. So ideally, you want everything to be compressed so it takes up less space, it downloads quicker. And the same is going to be true for your images, and it's also going to be true for your scripts. Like you can see right here, we want all of that compressed. Now there's a handful of tools that we can use to make these better. We're going to go over some of them. There are some automated tools like Apache Ant, or if you're using something like Sass, which is a utility that allows you to code your CSS more programmatically, if that makes sense. You can use variables and things like that. If that intrigues you, look for Mastering Sass. It's a quick tip video series I did on NetTouch. Okay, but we're going to take a look at just some easy compression methods. So the first one is going to be compressing our CSS. So I have some of these saved for this lesson. We'll go to CSS compress, and you can see it's available at CSS drive. So what you would want to do is go back, and when you're ready, you might even want to make backups. So what you would do is something like this: new file, style.min.css. That way, when in production, you can still work with your uncompressed style sheets, but when it's when it's deployed, you only deploy the minified versions. But we want to take a look at another thing. If we go back to index.html, can you see all of these files right here? That's for what we call HTTP requests. And ideally, when you deploy, try to combine these as best as you can, but make sure you retain the order. So we're going to group these all together. I'm going to get reset, and that's already been compressed, so that's good. But I'm going to paste that in. And then what was next on this list? 960, and then text. So I'm going to grab all that, and luckily all of this is compressed, so we don't really have to repeat this if we don't want to. Then we have text. And then we have our style.css. So I'm just pasting all of this in here, and I'm going to hit compress, and that's going to compress all of it as much as possible, and it's going to give me the result. And as you can see right there, and look, we've saved 20%. So now the download is going to be 20% smaller. So I'll paste that into style.min. Look at that. So now the cool thing though is we get to come back and get rid of all of this, and that's 3 less HTTP requests. And I'll change that to min.css. And we want to make sure this still works, because every once in a while you can have some issues. So I'm going to go back to our site name, refresh the page, and sure enough, it doesn't appear to be any issues. But one thing I do see, is inspect element. Notice how this search bar, I think that was there before. So I need to fix that. Let's go back to P, and we have header form P, and we need to figure out how we can get this just right. And so I'm going to hover over each one, and I think we worked on this earlier. So let's see how we can get this. Okay, input type equals text, and it looks like when we applied a default margin right, it pushed that over. So now that's what I need to be sure as I go into header form input and reset the margin right. Okay, header form. And let's see if we have an input. Yeah, we have that, so we'll do it right here. Header form input margin right is 0. And then I will just go ahead and manually put this in here just to save time. Margin right 0. And if you want to keep it compressed, you can do it like that. Okay, that's good. Come back, refresh the page. Now it looks like that's not taking, and it's probably a specificity issue. So we could say type equals text, and that'll give us a little bit more weight to push that over. You might need to play with that. Okay, so now we do have that fully compressed style sheet. Now we need to compress our JavaScript. So we'll go to another one, and this is jscompress.com. You have your option of using Dean Edwards Packer or the Minify. Minify is going to be quicker for this scenario. So again, we need to go back to index.html and see how we import everything. So we import jQuery, and then at the very bottom, looks like we do it again. Let's make sure we get rid of that. Definitely. And we can update jQuery while we're at it to 1.5. Okay, and now let's just go to scripts.js, and we'll save that, come back, copy that, and make sure we compress all of that. And that creates a very small file. New file, scripts.min. But like I said, there are ways to automate this, and if you're doing lots of projects, you'll definitely want to look into this. But for your first few projects, it's okay to do it manually. All right, go back to index.html, scripts.min.js, and let's come back and make sure that it still works. Nothing broke. And all we used it for was this, and that seems to be working just fine. Okay, so now we've compressed it. The last thing I want to do is make sure the images are as small as possible. So there are a couple techniques you can use. We're not going to get into using sprites as efficiently in this introductory lesson, but what sprites are is for all your background images, you can create one massive image and you place all of your images on it. NetTouch uses it, the Envato marketplaces use it, tons of people do. And that way, you only have one HTTP request. And it's a larger image, but it's only once. And then you use background positioning to kind of crop, quote unquote, exactly what you want to display. We're not going to do that too much because we don't have that many background images. But what we will do, and also you have issues when using sprites and then like background repeats, it gets a little bit harder. But what we will use is something called Smush It. And let me just Google it. Yeah, Yahoo Smush It. Developed by a guy named Storian. He's a very smart JavaScript developer. But what this allows us to do is it'll compress your images as much as possible, but it'll keep them glossless so that you don't lose any quality. So I'm going to select some files, and I'm going to go into all of these. So I can just copy, smush them, and now if I look here, can you see all of the savings here? This one especially, header divider saved 81%, only 200 bytes, but all of this saves. And then we can see right here we saved 12K, and that can add up. And then let's do the exact same thing for those other folders. And we'll do icons as well. And that's good. So I'm going to download the smushed images. Okay, so let's hide that. And if we come back, here is that downloaded zip file. And if I open that up, it has all of our new images. So at this point, all I have to do is copy and paste them into our project. I will just drag these in. And then we do have to do a couple of things. Because we lost our folder structure, let me go ahead and take Graphic River and Theme Forest, replace them. And then we need to do the same thing for Dribbble, Facebook, Flickr, and Twitter, and drag those into icons. But now we've just saved about 50K, and all of that adds up when you're compressing. Never forget to do that. So we can delete these. We're done with it. Come back and do our final check. Refresh. And now this is our finished product. It's not 100%, but it's enough to get going, and then you can always continue modifying it, making it closer to what we want. Looks like we did miss those images. Let's fix that really quickly. Inspect element. And we can see IMG Graphic River. Looks like we were referencing those directly from the root. So we can just grab those, go into banners, and take those out. There they go. But anyways, that's going to do it for this lesson. So now that we're all complete, as soon as we hit 80,000 subscribers, if you want, we'll take this and we'll turn it into a little WordPress site so that you can dynamically create new posts, you can view archives, you can search correctly, and things like that. So thank you so much for sticking around. Sorry for the delay with Chapter 9. But for more tips and tutorials, always subscribe to NetTouch, or you can follow us on Twitter at Envato WebDev, or on Facebook at NetTouch Plus, facebook.com/NetTouch Plus. All right, my name's Jeffrey Way. See you later. Bye.